In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rates of death by suicide have grown significantly. This is especially true for communities of color where access to mental health resources were already in short supply. In recent weeks, several high profile deaths by suicide have brought the issue of mental health in minority communities to the forefront of public awareness. First, Mayor Kevin Ward of Hyattsville, Maryland, then South Carolina native and Walking Dead star Moses Moseley. Shortly after him, actor, producer, and activist Regina King lost her son Ian to suicide. And most recently, we've lost Miss America 2019 attorney and television news correspondent Cheslie Kryst. These stories touched the hearts of so many and opened the door for an important conversation. I asked Ashley Young of Everyday Wellness to sit down with me and share her perspective as a licensed professional counselor who takes a holistic approach to patient care and who has built her practice around helping destigmatize the act of seeking mental wellness services. Ms. Young, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
No problem. Thank you for taking time to sit down with me. Wanted to start off, first of all, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Ashley Young. I'm the owner and lead therapist of Everyday Wellness. At Everyday Wellness, we offer a very holistic approach to care. Here we have professional counseling, life coaching, massage therapy, and yoga. And part of that model is to normalize the idea of all forms of therapy as being a part of wellness, and recognizing that we manifest things in our body differently, and there are multiple ways to be able to target those. And so, and we pride ourselves on offering all of those services here in one setting.
How long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing since 2008. I've been in private practice since 2014, and then I launched Everyday Wellness in 2021.
Okay. Wanted to take this opportunity. We recently have experienced several high-profile deaths by suicide. A few weeks ago, actress and director Regina King's son died by suicide, and just recently, a few days ago, we had former Miss USA pageant winner who was a lawyer and a reporter who was a beautiful young lady died by suicide. And I wanted to take this opportunity, and I chose to speak with you because I follow your organization on Facebook, and your approach that you just mentioned encompasses more than just sitting down talking. And I wanted to kind of get your take or your expertise on where we are in terms of, especially in African American communities. Is the suicide rate going up, or is it about the same?
Well, it's definitely, thank you for asking that question. I think it's a great question. Suicide rates from 2009 to 2019 were increasing by 35%. And over the past 2 years, 2019, it reduced by maybe 2%, and then another in 2020, down 8% in women and 2% in men. Now, that's a general idea of where the suicide rates are. Within the context of that reduction, other ethnic groups encountered increases, right? And they're pretty significant enough that I just wrote them down. I just kind of want to state them out loud. Okay. Black girls ages between 10 and 24, or 30% increase. Black boys and men, same age group, 23% increase. Hispanic women, 40%. Hispanic men, 20%, and Asian, and 30%. So you have to remember the greater reduction in suicide is because the majority of Caucasian Americans encompass 64%. And so if there's a decline, one would say, oh, that's a great thing. But within our minorities communities, we are seeing a significant spike in suicide over the past year or two.
Is there any indication or clinical evidence or discussions being talked about that can account for why there's an increase?
I definitely think that we're doing a better job in having conversations about it. However, I think that there's so many individuals that still do not have the adequate tools to be able to navigate them. They even teach you in the basics foundations of multicultural counseling that African American men, Hispanic men are one of the most difficult to get to come into care and then stay in care. Right, and so I believe that an element of safety sometimes isn't established because of due to maybe not having enough minority male clinicians in the field to be able to seek, but also having minority females there to represent, which you have increased that by leaps and bounds. And so I do think that there's a lot of mental health awareness that's been spoken about. A lot of people are seeking care, but there's still a greater number of individuals that are still very afraid to come into care, may not understand the value of care, or believe that they need to be in a state of crisis before coming, and oftentimes that may be too late.
Okay. Is there anything that one's family members or we can do, any type of signs that we should look for when somebody may be going through a crisis and we not subtle signs?
Yeah, I think any abnormal behavior, and I say abnormal meaning, if someone is lively and then now they may be disengaged, or you can tell they may be disengaged and maybe not sharing anything, then you want to be a little more maybe assertive in asking a difficult question. And sometimes that's the thing that we're afraid of, is asking directly, are you thinking of harming yourself, and have you had thoughts of suicide? What we find is that people that may have attempted suicide or that have suicidal ideations often say, no one asked me the question directly. It was too hard to say. However, if someone said, are you thinking about suicide? I would have said yes, right? And we do other things, like, you're not thinking about anything stupid, right? Well, if I'm thinking about it and you just called it stupid, I'm not going to come forward with that. And again, the person didn't do it with intention, but it's the discomfort of the other person being able to come forward. But there are other things like escorting people to care. In the military, they have a very simple program that's called ACE. I ask, I care for you, and then I escort you, right? We have such busy lives now, right? And sometimes people just need assistance getting to that first appointment. Just getting there, because it's too hard to get there on their own.
Okay. What are some of the things you mentioned in your earlier statistics that you read, that African American males, is very hard to get them into care and get them to stay in care? What are some of the things, or what are some of the things that a loved one who may have a African American male in their life that they're concerned about, what are some of the things they can do or say to kind of get him there? Because, as African American male, I don't really want to talk about my feelings. You know what I'm saying? So what are some of those things?
Well, you said something that's very interesting, which is where I was going to go, is if you have someone that may be resistant or maybe not thinking about care, not desiring, think about how are you allowing room for their feelings to coexist. Because oftentimes in our culture, we don't allow room for even men to coexist with their emotions. We have an expectation that vulnerability shouldn't be there. We associate that with weakness when, obviously I'm a therapist, I know that vulnerability takes courage. But it's not weakness. And so, making sure if you're a loved one of someone that's struggling with that, like, how am I allowing room for their feelings to show up? Like, have I even asked a question, like, how was your day? If the person just says, fine, like, how am I following through with that and say, no, like, it's okay to let me know how you're feeling. And sometimes if you have not spent time, like, identifying that language, it seems like a very simple question, but oftentimes if we don't spend enough time sorting through what we feel, identifying how we feel is one of the hardest tasks. Often people, if I ask, how do you feel? Well, I feel like they think I'm this. Well, that's not your feeling. That's still a thought, right? And so it takes skill, but I think asking the question, how are you feeling, being supportive, meeting people where they are, but also think about fostering an environment that would promote vulnerability and sharing. And that starts with allowing someone else's emotion to coexist with ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is, since the pandemic, we've all, a lot of people have been shut in. And once we think that we've made it through this end of this, it starts back. So we've been doing a lot of things online, and we've seen an increase in telemedicine. So how is that impacting the industry, and what has been your experience with telemedicine?
Yeah, so in COVID, well, we're still in COVID, but from I think March of 2020 until July of 2021, a lot of medical providers were now allowed to get special permission to communicate via telehealth. Special credentialing that before otherwise wasn't permitted, maybe by Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so what insurance company has done is allowed telehealth to be accessible for clinicians to utilize. But even during the pandemic, they lifted some of the protocols. And so if I didn't have a HIPAA compliant video to use, they allowed Facebook to be a method for a short-term basis. They allowed FaceTime to be a method. But right now, I would say now that we're back to proper protocols, about 50% of my caseloads on a given week is still, I'm seeing it telehealth. And I think it just allows more accessibility. You know, when you think of getting off of work, going to an appointment, and coming back to work, sometimes that can take 2 hours. Versus now someone may go to their car and get on a 50-minute session, and then they've only really lost an hour of time at work. And so it has definitely made therapy more accessible. It has made psychiatry care and being able to prescribe medicines more accessible. And there are some insurance companies that will remove their deductible and copay if you opt to see your provider as telehealth, as a way to kind of keep you more engaged at work, and but also allow you means to get adequate care.
Has the giving care through virtually, have you seen, do patients typically, is it easier, or is it just as effective? Is it, I
found that a lot of times it can be just as effective. Okay. I think I had my own biases about it initially. I never really wanted to be a telehealth provider, and then I was forced to, and then I was able to see the benefits. I think there are still cues and indicators sometimes that can make it very difficult. Sometimes clients are, even if they're at home, you could tell they're still not feeling as free and emotionally safe as they would, because maybe someone's in another room, they may be on the other side of the house, but just the idea of not knowing where they are sometimes kind of prohibits progress. And so I would say for the most part, it allows therapy to continue. It allows when someone is sick, maybe to still show up for their appointment. And so it allows you to have a continuum care, and I think you can get effective care. My opinion is still more effective in person.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your approach to mental health and mental wellness. Your approach encompasses yoga and a lot of other different things. I'm hoping the right term is holistic approach. Tell me a little bit, why is that?
Yeah, so it was important to me. Obviously, I was in private practice before coming here. I noticed that there is a difference sometimes when someone comes into a place, you're kind of in a quiet lobby, very quiet, no one in the room, wants the other person to know they're there, and then you come there, and so it creates all this anxiety when one person walks in the room. It was very important for me to create an environment where you felt welcome, and we also normalize care. And so if you come into here, you don't know if someone is behind the doors doing yoga, or someone's here for life coaching or massage therapy. The fact that no one knows what I'm in here for, kind of already reduces that stress coming in. But I think my approach is a very trauma approach. I'm a trauma-informed therapist, and so part of my work is helping people put pieces together to help understand the road of how they got here, and maybe why some things are more challenging now. And there are things that sometimes we don't realize that are help shaping our ideas about ourselves, like our core beliefs about ourselves and about the world, that really keep us stuck. And sometimes we don't understand where that came from. And so part of this work is kind of understanding where it came from, and then how do we refine that to help maybe free me moving forward. And so whether that is something like sexual abuse, or how did I develop beliefs about not being worthy, right? We don't really walk around stating out loud what our core beliefs are. Part of our work is trying to identify what they are, because they do exist. They guide everything that we do, and they guide how people interact with us. And so as part of our work is kind of understanding what that is. We also have the massage therapist she has a certification in medical massage therapist, right? And so insurance companies sometimes will cover care that is specified for injuries, and so she provides that on top of typical Swedish deep tissue massage. We work with families, children here. And then also yoga on Wednesdays is free for every client that gets a service here. And so that's a service that we give back. Again, culturally, yoga is not one of those things that we have always engaged in, but it's very engaging with our mind and body. And so we really focus on educating people on the mind and body connection, how what I consume here manifests itself in this body. And so if you're intimidated by the therapy process, you can start on a massage table. If you're intimidated by a massage table, you can start in the yoga room, or you can start here on the sofa.
Okay, thank you for that. Part of that approach, there is also a clothing brand that speaks to mental wellness. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my clothing line is separate from Everyday Wellness. It's theashleyyoung.com. But part of my mantra has been in my therapy work is granting yourself permission. And I believe that it does not matter how skilled the therapist is. It does not matter how skilled or how supportive your family can be. You can become well through tools, but it's not until you actively decide that you're going to grant yourself permission to kind of embark on this journey. And so the line is grant yourself permission to feel, grant yourself permission to heal, and forgive. And so it's empowering individuals to have their own voice and agency in that process, but then also celebrating, like, I decided to give myself permission to heal. No one gave that to me. Someone may have took away something, but my healing journey starts with me.
Ms. Young, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and find out how they could receive service, or wanted just to find out some more information for what services are available to them, how would they do that?
Yes, so on Instagram and Facebook, you can find Everyday Wellness by typing in Everyday Wellness SC for South Carolina. Also, my Instagram is AshleyYoung_therapist.
Okay. Ms. Young, thank you for taking time to sit down with me.
Thank you for having me.